I always thought the moonrise would be the happiest night of my life. For 20 years, I believed the moon would rise, Rowan would take my hand, our marks would glow, and the bond I had felt since childhood would finally become real. I'd imagined the warmth in his eyes, the pride in his voice, the moment he would claim me in front of the entire pack. Instead, he grabbed my wrist like it disgusted him. The laughter began even before he opened his mouth. Sharp, mocking, slicing into me like knives. The pack gathered in a circle around us, their shadows stretching long across the moonlit clearing. The drums faded. The chanting stopped. Everyone waited. Everyone watched. Rowan stepped forward, shoulders squared, jaw tight, lips twisted in a cruel smirk I had never seen before. "Lyra," he drawled, loud enough for every wolf present to hear. "Do you know what it means to be a disappointment?" My stomach dropped. My wolf whimpered. He tightened his grip on my wrist, lifting our linked hands as if forcing the crowd to focus more intently on my humiliation. "You think destiny ties us? You think the moon binds us? You think I would ever claim this?" The crowd murmured, hungry for blood. My throat closed. "Rowan, what are you—" He leaned in, his breath a venomous whisper against my cheek. "I'd rather mate a corpse," he said, louder now, "than an omega like you." The world stopped. Just stopped. The words struck me harder than any physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. A ringing sound filled my ears, drowning out the gasps, the muffled laughter, the shifting feet. I felt my knees weaken, but Rowan wasn't finished. He yanked my arm forward, exposing the half-formed glowing thread of our fated bond, the delicate mark every pair received before the rite was completed. He held it up for the crowd to see. "This," he said, "is a mistake I'm correcting." Before I could muster breath, before I could beg, scream, or even move, he tore the bond. The surge of pain was like fire exploding inside my chest. I crumpled, collapsing onto the cold ground, fingers clawing instinctively at my heart as if I could somehow hold the wound together. My wolf howled inside me, a desperate, wounded sound I couldn't release. The crowd erupted. "Unworthy! Unwanted! Rejected! Omega trash!" Voices hurled at me like stones. I curled into myself, shaking so violently I thought my bones might splinter. The broken bond seared through every nerve, crackling under my skin, leaving me gasping and sobbing in the dirt while the pack watched like it was entertainment. Rowan stepped back, wiping his hands as if touching me had dirtied him, my vision blurred. Tears, shame, heartbreak. Every emotion drowned me at once. "Look at her," someone sneered. "Can't even handle a rejection." She thought the beta would want her. Pathetic. I pressed my palm to the ground to push myself up, but my arm gave out. I fell again. Hard. Pain radiated through my chest, hot, pulsing, unbearable. I had never felt so small, never felt so worthless, never felt so exposed. All I could do was kneel there, broken, listening to the chorus of voices tearing apart everything I had ever hoped for. Then, the air changed. A cold wind swept across the clearing. Shadows shifted as if bowing. The jeering stopped instantly, choked off mid-laugh, mid-gasp. The sudden silence was more terrifying than the cruelty had been. I sensed him before I saw him. A presence too powerful to ignore, too heavy, too commanding, too furious. A massive shadow fell over me, swallowing the moonlight. I lifted my head, breath trembling. Boots stepped into view. Black, armored, dusted with silver runes. The clearing vibrated with authority, with dominance, with a power that made the wolves around us instinctively lower their heads. Then came the voice. Low, cold, deadly. "You dare break a fated bond," the voice rumbled. "In my kingdom?" The pack froze. Some trembled. Rowan paled. I couldn't see his face, but I didn't need to. Every wolf in the clearing bowed, because the Alpha King had arrived, and his shadow was over me. I didn't know how long I stayed on my knees. Seconds? Minutes? A lifetime? All I could hear was the broken echo of Rowan's voice replaying in my skull. I'd rather made a corpse than an omega like you. My ribs ached with each breath, my eyes fixed on the dirt beneath me, the scent of humiliation thick and sour around the circle. But then, silence. Heavy, complete, suffocating. It wrapped around the clearing like a storm about to break. I lifted my head, just barely, my vision still blurred from tears. And there he was, King Kale of the Bloodfang Dominion. The man wolves whispered about in fear. The ruler whose power was carved in legend and blood. A king who never attended lesser pack rites. A king who should not, could not, have been here. Yet he stood in the moonlight clearing, a towering silhouette framed by the silver-blue glow of torches. His long black coat billowed behind him, lined with obsidian armor that shimmered like a night sky ready to swallow stars. Every wolf bowed low, foreheads nearly touching the ground. Except Rowan. Of course Rowan didn't bow. He stood there, chin high, trying to look powerful while his hands still shook from whatever instinct warned him that this was no ordinary interruption. My pulse hammered as Kyle stepped forward, each footfall deliberate and slow, like he was controlling the earth's permission to move. He didn't spare Rowan a single glance. No. His eyes, cold silver, sharp enough to carve bone, were on me. On me. The weight of his attention struck like a physical force. I sucked in a thin, shaking breath, my wolf pressing painfully against my skin as if trying to hide. Kyle stopped directly in front of me. "Who?" he said, voice low enough to vibrate through my bones. "Did this to you?" My mouth opened, but nothing came out. Nothing. I couldn't speak. My throat wouldn't work. My voice had shattered somewhere between Rowan's rejection and the pack's laughter. Rowan stepped forward before I could even gather enough courage to breathe. "I did," he announced proudly, loud enough for everyone to hear. "She belonged to me, until I realized she's nothing." The audacity, the pride, the smugness. My stomach twisted in humiliation and dread. Kale still didn't look at him. The king simply inhaled, slow and deep, like he was scenting the truth, and his jaw tightened so sharply it looked carved from obsidian. I'd never seen rage contained so quietly. No shouting, no threats, no explosion. Just a flicker of something lethal beneath his stoic expression. Rowan laughed nervously. She was weak, useless. I did her a favor. A long silence. Kale finally turned his head toward him, just slightly. Just enough to show acknowledgement. It was worse than being ignored. The king's voice was soft, but it cut like frostbite. "A fated bond is not yours to break." Rowan swallowed but forced another smirk. "It was my right. She's barely a wolf." Barely a wolf. The words sank into me like poison. Kale's silver eyes flicked back to me. "Stand," he commanded. My breath hitched. I couldn't defy him, even if I wanted to. My legs trembled violently as I pushed myself upright, the world spinning for a moment before it settled. I stood before the king, feeling small, frail, exposed. His gaze roamed over my tear-streaked face, my shaking shoulders, the faint scar where the bond was torn. Every second under that scrutiny felt unbearable. Fear churned in my chest. Dread crawled under my skin. His presence alone made the air hard to breathe. "Look at me," he said. And God's help me, I did. His expression didn't soften, but something in his eyes shifted. A flicker, a calculation, a recognition I couldn't understand. Rowan scoffed behind me. "My king, she's not worth your attention. She's—" Kyle raised a single hand. Rowan's voice died instantly. "Speak again," Kale murmured, still staring at me, "and you will not live to see the next moon." A ripple of terror coursed through the pack. Someone whimpered. Someone else dropped to their knees harder. Rowan's smugness dissolved into panic. My king, I didn't mean. Kyle ignored him. Completely. His attention returned to me, burning like frost and fire together. You are hurt, he said. It wasn't a question. It wasn't pity. It was a fact he said out loud to no one but the moon and me. The sting of his attention struck deep, deeper than Rowan's cruelty, because it felt like he saw everything I was trying to hide. Every wound, every weakness, every piece of me shattered during the rite. My voice cracked. He rejected me. Kyle's eyes darkened. No, he said, tone colder than winter's steel. He broke law, bond, and destiny. My heart lurched. Kale took a step closer. Too close. Close enough that I felt his breath brush my cheek. Close enough that the scent of storm wind and midnight wrapped around me. And he spoke a single sentence that changed the air in the clearing. This will not stand. My breath stopped. Rowan stumbled back. The pack trembled. Because the Alpha King wasn't here to watch a rite. He was here for me. I should have run. My instincts screamed it. My wolf whimpered it. Every cell in my body begged me to crawl away from the clearing and disappear into the dark forest surrounding the moonrite grounds. But Omegas don't run. We endure. We kneel. We take the blows. We bow our heads and pretend the world doesn't hurt us. So when Rowan jerked his chin at the enforcers and said, "Put her in the purity circle," I didn't move. Couldn't move. Hands grabbed my arms. Rough. Eager. Too tight. The pack surged forward like they had been waiting for this moment, waiting to tear apart whatever was left of me after Rowan's rejection. Let's see if she ever had a wolf at all. Probably muted. No wolf would want her. Their voices tangled together, weaving into a net of humiliation that dragged me deeper and deeper into the clearing's center. I tried to pull my arm back, but one of the enforcers hissed in my ear, "Don't make this harder." Harder? My heart had been ripped open minutes ago. How much harder could it get? They shoved me into the purity circle, a ring of glowing runes carved into the earth, used only for one purpose, to expose an Omega who supposedly lied about their wolf. Even though I had never lied, not once, my wolf had always been quiet, faint, buried deep in my chest. But the pack didn't care about truth. They cared about blood, about spectacle, about seeing me break again and again until there was nothing left to break. "Stand," a guard snapped. I forced my shaking legs to straighten. My bare feet hovered above the carved moon sigils, heat radiating from them as if the ground itself despised me. Torchlight flickered across countless faces, wolves I'd grown up with, trained beside, healed, trusted. None of them looked away. They wanted to see me fail. Rowan folded his arms, smirking. "Shift," he commanded. "Or admit you've been worthless all along." My throat tightened. "Rowan, please." "Shift," he repeated sharply, louder. The crowd echoed him. "Shift. Shift. Shift." Every syllable landed like a blow. My body trembled so violently I could barely stand upright. I glanced at King Kale. He stood at the edge of the circle, arms at his sides, expression stone still. But his eyes, those silver eyes, were sharper than blades, watching everything, missing nothing. Why was he still here? Why hadn't he stopped this? Why was he letting them do this to me? "Begin," Rowan ordered. Closed my eyes. Tried to calm my breathing. Tried to reach the faint glow inside my chest. The tiny spark that had always been there. Soft and warm, like a candle in a storm. But the second I reached for it, pain split through me. A hot, tearing agony that ripped from my spine to my limbs like lightning gone wrong. I gasped, choking on the force of it. The crowd laughed. I tried again. Bones twisted, just slightly, then snapped back, leaving me heaving, sweat dripping down my back. My legs buckled. More laughter. "Look at her!" She can't even shift halfway. She's faking it. Rowan raised his voice. Come on, Lyra, show us something, or will you crumble again? Tears blurred my vision. My wolf scratched inside me, weak, muffled, drowning beneath the pain. I reached for her desperately, silently, begging, please, please help me. Please come. Please, don't leave me alone. But she didn't come. Not fully. Not clearly. Not enough. Another blast of pain hit me like a hammer. My spine arched, my fingers curled, my knees gave out. I collapsed onto the burning sigils, the heat searing into my skin. The crowd howled with laughter. Rowan clapped mockingly. Pathetic. I was shaking so hard I could barely breathe. I pressed my palms into the dirt and forced myself upright a few inches. I could taste blood in my mouth. I tried again. Pain. Snap. Burn. Agony. My body convulsed, and when I fell this time, my cheek hit the ground. The rune light seared into my skin. Everything hurt. Everything blurred. Everything echoed Rowan's words. Nothing. Nothing. She's nothing. The laughter blended with the ringing in my ears. My vision darkened at the edges. I wanted to disappear. I wanted the earth to swallow me whole. But then, a new sound. Not laughter. Not taunting. Not Rowan's smug voice. A slow inhale. A shift in the air. The kind of silence that isn't silence at all, but pressure. Heavy. Dense. Crackling. I lifted my head weakly. Kale hadn't moved once. Not even a blink. But his eyes had changed, narrowed, focused. Cold fury simmered behind them, the kind of fury kings went to war over. He took one step forward, boots landing outside the purity circle with lethal precision. Every wolf around us stiffened as if a predator had entered the clearing, and in a voice quiet enough to make the torches tremble, King Kale said, "Enough." A shudder ripped through the pack. Rowan swallowed. The enforcers froze. And for the first time since the rite began, I felt something push through the haze of pain. Not strength, not hope, but pressure. Invisible, electric, pulsing. Like the world itself was holding its breath, waiting, watching, knowing something was about to break. And maybe for the first time, it wouldn't be me. I don't remember falling. I only remember the pain. It crushed me. From spine to ribs, from bones to blood, from wolf to soul. I lay curled on the burning sigils of the purity circle, trembling so violently the ground vibrated beneath me. My vision pulsed in and out of focus. My breath came in ragged, broken gasps. Somewhere beyond the ringing in my ears, I heard Rowan laughing. See? Nothing. Not even a spark. Voices snickered. Boots shifted in the dirt. Wolves jeered in the shadows. Worthless. Wolfless. Dead inside. I wanted to disappear. I wanted the earth to swallow me so I wouldn't have to feel the shame searing through my chest, or the hollow ache where my broken bond still burned. But something else burned deeper. Not pain, not humiliation. Something heavier. Older. Darker. A pressure behind my ribs. Small at first, like a fist pressing gently against my heart. Then harder. Then harder. Then, like something imprisoned was waking up, I closed my eyes, clutching at my chest. The pressure expanded, stretching, pushing upward, clawing toward the surface. My wolf. My forgotten, muted, starved wolf. She didn't whimper this time. She didn't hide. She roared. My breath hitched. And the moon flared. A blinding white gold explosion tore open the sky, washing the clearing in radiant fire. Gasps echoed around me as wolves shielded their eyes, stumbling back from the sudden brilliance. What is happening? Get back! The moon. Why is it? But I didn't hear the rest, because the pressure inside me snapped, and agony, real agony, ripped through me, unlike anything I'd ever felt. My bones twisted, cracked, reformed. My spine arched so sharply I thought it would tear free from my body. My scream shattered into a sound that wasn't human. Not anymore. Heat surged beneath my skin, hot enough to ignite the air around me, and for the first time, the purity circle's sigils flickered as if afraid of what was happening inside them. Then, everything hit at once. The shift, the pain, the eruption. And then, a golden wolf exploded from my body. Light burst outward from me in a sweeping arc, blasting back dirt, dust, and wolf energy in a shockwave that snapped tree branches and sent several pack members sprawling. For a heartbeat, just one, the clearing went silent. I stood there, fur like liquid gold, eyes burning like twin suns, markings etched across my flanks in bright, shimmering patterns older than Stormfang itself. Gasps tore through the crowd. Oh gods! What is that? No, no, it can't be. Golden, she's one of them. My paws dug into the earth, and the ground trembled beneath them. A golden wolf. Impossible, extinct, a myth. And yet, I was. My senses sharpened beyond anything human. I could smell Rowan's terror spike, sharp and acrid. Could hear the pounding of every heart in the clearing, could feel the threads of ancient power humming beneath my paws, awakening to my presence. The laughter died. The mockery died. Everything died. Except fear. Real fear. Rowan stumbled. Backward, eyes wide, face pale, his earlier arrogance evaporating like mist burned away by dawn. No, he whispered. No, this is wrong. You're supposed to be nothing. You're supposed to be... I took one step toward him. The earth cracked. A growl rose from my chest, low, vibrating, carrying a power that came from generations past, from a lineage thought long dead. Rowan fell onto his back, scrambling away from me. King Kale, stop her! She's a danger! She's feral! But Kale didn't stop me. He didn't move. He didn't even blink. He watched me with a stillness that felt ancient, reverent, like he was witnessing something sacred, something forbidden, something that should not exist and yet suddenly did. My wolf lifted her head to the sky, and she, howled. A sound so powerful it shook the treetops, sent flocks of birds scattering into the night, and rippled through the bones of every wolf present. It wasn't just a howl. It was a declaration, a resurrection, a warning, a birth cry of power that had been chained too long. When the last echo faded, the clearing stood frozen in holy silence, because the Omega they had rejected, humiliated, broken, had become the wolf their ancestors once bowed to, the wolf who should not exist, the wolf who shattered their world with a single howl. And somewhere, deep inside the blazing gold of my new form, a thought finally surfaced through the fire. They were wrong about me. All of them. And the night they tried to destroy me was the night I truly awakened. I didn't know how long I stood there in my golden form. Every second felt stretched, suspended, like time itself was afraid to move in the presence of something it didn't understand. My wolf's chest heaved, glowing with molten light. Power hummed under my skin, wild, ancient, pouring through me like a river finally breaking its dam. The clearing burned with my aura, golden sparks drifting through the air like pieces of the sun had shattered around me. Every wolf in the circle trembled, except one, King Kale. He didn't flinch, didn't step back, didn't bare his teeth in dominance. He stepped toward me, slowly, deliberately, like approaching a sacred creature. My wolf snarled instinctively, not in threat, but in warning, confused by this man who moved without fear through the storm of my awakening. Kale's silver eyes held mine, steady, unwavering. I felt something inside me soften, just a fraction. He reached the edge of the purity circle, the gold light bathing his armor in a warm glow. The entire pack watched with wide, horrified eyes, clearly expecting him to lift a weapon, unleash a command, assert dominance over the monstrous creature they believed I'd become. But he did none of that. He did something that scattered every thought in my head like leaves in a storm. Kale sank to one knee. Before me. Before a wolf they believed extinct. Before an omega they had mocked. Before the girl they watched break again and again. My breath, my wolf's breath, hitched. Kale bowed his head, voice low and reverent, the auric line. Lives. The way he said it made the world tilt. I, who had been discarded, rejected, humiliated, suddenly felt seen, truly seen, for the first time in my life. Not as a burden, not as a mistake, not as an omega, but as something rare, something powerful, something meant to exist. My wolf stepped back, trembling with the weight of it all. Golden light rippled through my fur, flickering with uncertainty. The pressure that had erupted inside me moments ago now pulsed softer, sweeter, like warmth spreading through a wound that had never healed. Kale lifted his gaze, and that was enough to break the golden form holding me together. The shift hit with a gentleness that scared me more than the pain ever had. My bones didn't snap this time. They folded like light bending. My body stretched and recoiled until I was kneeling on the dirt. Naked, shaking, breathless. The night air bit at my bare skin, but I barely felt it. All I could feel was shame crashing over me in violent waves. My arms wrapped around my torso. My hair fell over my face. Tears stung my eyes again. Too many tears. Too fast. Too raw. I expected mockery. I expected disgust. I expected someone, anyone, to drag me away and finish what Rowan had started. But Kale rose smoothly and shrugged off his cloak. The heavy fabric, black, lined with storm-gray fur, fell around my shoulders like a protective embrace. He wrapped it gently, carefully, making sure it covered every inch of me before fastening the clasp beneath my throat. His fingers brushed my skin. I shivered. Not from cold, from how incredibly careful he was being with someone no one had ever been careful with. "You were never unworthy," Kale murmured. I froze. His voice wasn't cold now. It wasn't sharp. It wasn't kingly. It was warm, almost tender, almost protective. "You were never nothing, Lyra." My breath trembled as he leaned slightly closer, lowering his voice like he was sharing a secret meant only for me. "They feared what they could never match." A sob escaped me, quiet, broken, because the truth was too much. All my life I thought my wolf was weak. All my life I thought I was the mistake. All my life I thought Rowan was right to cast me aside. But Kale, this intimidating, impossible man, looked at me like I was something he'd been searching for. Like I wasn't a burden. Like I wasn't a shame. Like I was an answer. Behind us, the pack remained silent. Rowan stood pale and shaking, his earlier arrogance drained from his face, replaced with terror. Kale ignored them all. He placed a hand, warm, steady, grounding, on my shoulder. Not claiming, not controlling, not dominating, reassuring. "You are not alone," he murmured. "Not anymore." My heart cracked open, not from pain, but from the first flicker of hope I'd felt since the night began. Because Kale didn't see a rejected omega. He saw the golden wolf. He saw me. And for the first time in my life, I believed I might be something worth kneeling for. I barely had time to breathe before the world shifted again. Kale straightened to his full, imposing height, his cloak still wrapped securely around my trembling body. Every eye in the clearing followed him, fearful, reverent, horrified, as he turned to face the pack that had gathered to watch me shatter. But now they were the ones trembling. "Lyra," he said, voice deep enough to reverberate in my bones, "stands under Bloodfang protection." The words dropped into the silence like thunder. For a heartbeat, no one moved. No one dared to breathe. Then Rowan found his voice. Broken, high-pitched, stripped of its earlier arrogance. My king, surely you don't mean..." "She's an omega, she's unstable, she's..." A growl rippled from Kale's chest. Low, cold, lethal. It vibrated through the ground, through my feet, through the very air I inhaled. Wolves collapsed to their knees instinctively. Even the wind seemed to bow. Rowan clamped his mouth shut, eyes wide with terror. Kale didn't repeat himself. He didn't need to. The pack knew what Bloodfang protection meant, what it demanded. A royal decree, enforced by the full weight of the king's authority. Once declared, it could not be challenged without risking treason. So they fell silent. All except one. A woman near the back, someone who had once handed me herbs in the infirmary with a kind smile, lifted her chin, heartbreak etched into her features. But she belongs to us. Kale's eyes snapped to her, sharp as blades. She never belonged to you, he said. You made certain of that. The woman flinched. Others lowered their gazes. Rowan took a shaky step backward, as if distance might protect him from the king's fury. Kale turned to me. Come. I didn't have the strength to resist, or the will. His cloak wrapped around me smelled of cold steel and pine, grounding me as he placed a steadying hand on my back. My legs felt weak, rubbery, unsure if they could carry me anywhere, but somehow I followed him out of the clearing. No one dared to stop us. No one even dared to speak. The pack parted like a wound splitting open, heads bowed as King Kale guided me through the moonlight grounds, away from the purity circle, away from the place where my heart had been torn apart. At the edge of the forest, a massive carriage awaited, black steel with silver runes glowing faintly along its sides. Royal, unmistakable, untouchable. Kale helped me step inside, his grip careful, as if I were made of glass, not broken, but precious. The door closed behind us with a soft thud, sealing the chaos outside. Inside, the carriage was warm, dimly lit by a single lantern. Plush seats lined the walls, thick furs draped across them. The moment I sank onto one, exhaustion washed over me in heavy waves. Kale sat across from me, silent, watching, unreadable. His gaze made me want to curl in on myself, but also made something else flicker inside me. Something small, trembling, impossibly fragile. Hope. My fingers twisted in his cloak, pulling it tighter around me as I whispered, barely audible. Why? He didn't move, didn't blink, didn't break that unwavering stare. I swallowed hard. Why save me? The carriage jerked forward as the horses began their slow, powerful trot. Kale leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on his knees, jaw shadowed in the lantern light. His voice came low, serious enough to make my heart stumble. Because fate screamed for me too. The words hung in the air like prophecy. I stared at him, stunned. My pulse raced, my mind scrambling for meaning, for logic, for something that made sense in a day that had been nothing but pain and impossible revelations. Fate, I echoed softly. Why would fate care about me? His silver eyes softened, just barely, like moonlight touching the surface of a lake. Because you were never meant to be small. My breath froze. You were never meant to be silent, he continued. Never meant to kneel in circles meant to break you. Never meant to be rejected by a coward who feared your rise. My throat tightened painfully. Kyle's voice lowered further, almost a whisper. The moment your wolf woke, every ancestral thread in this land pulled toward you like a storm seeking its center. You think I could ignore something like that? He shook his head once, slowly. No, Lyra. Fate chose. I listened. Something inside my chest cracked, quietly, like ice melting. I didn't know whether to cry or to hide, or to beg him to stop looking at me like I was something more than the rejected Omega I'd been hours ago. I tried to speak, but my voice wobbled. I don't understand any of this. You will, he said, and there was no doubt in his tone. But not tonight. I looked down at my hands, still trembling, still carrying flecks of golden light beneath the skin. Kyle leaned back, arms crossing over his chest, gaze softening ever so slightly. Rest, he murmured. You're safe now. Safe. Me. The words felt impossible. But as the carriage rolled into the night, the cloak pulled warm around me, the king's gaze steady and unyielding. I felt something flicker inside me. Something small, delicate, dangerous. Hope. For the first time in my life. I didn't sleep that night. I tried. Gods, I tried. But every time I closed my eyes, I felt it again. The explosion of my wolf, the heat of golden fire cracking through my bones, the way the earth trembled under my roar, the clearing, the purity circle, Rowan's face when he realized I was something he couldn't control. It all replayed in flashes that stole my breath. By dawn, my hands were still trembling. Cale noticed without looking at me. He noticed everything. We arrived at Bloodfang Keep as the sun crested the mountains, painting the fortress in streaks of pink and gold. The gates opened for us alone, guards bowing low as the carriage rolled through. Wolves stared at me from the shadows, not in mockery, not in disdain, in fear. A fear so sharp I felt it slice across my skin like cold wind. Cale led me through the stone corridors of the keep without speaking. His cloak was still around my shoulders. It dragged on the floor behind me like a shadow that didn't belong to me. Finally, he stopped before an ancient wooden door carved with symbols I didn't recognize. Arcs of moonlight, wolves circling a sun, runes that looked older than any language I'd ever seen. "This way," he said. His voice held something different. Not command, not threat, not even authority. Something cautious, like he was about to show me a truth even he wasn't certain how to face. He pushed the door open. I stepped inside and stopped breathing. The Hall of Kings. I'd read about it in old records, seen sketches, heard stories, but none of it compared to standing inside it. The chamber was vast, its ceiling disappearing into shadows. Moonlight poured through narrow windows high above, illuminating a throne carved from a single slab of obsidian. It wasn't polished. It wasn't decorated. It wasn't adorned in jewels or gold. It simply existed, with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Cale's footsteps echoed behind me as he walked toward it. "This throne," he said quietly, "has chosen every ruler of Bloodfang for the last 1,000 years. I swallowed, unable to tear my gaze away. It looked alive, almost. The surface shimmered faintly like the stone was breathing. But as I stepped forward, something changed. The air thickened. The ground vibrated under my feet. A soft hum began to resonate through my bones, so faint I thought I imagined it. Then the throne glowed. A faint ring of gold shimmered along its base. I froze. Cale didn't. He watched the throne, not me. "It reacted to you in the clearing," he murmured. But I wasn't sure how much. I felt sick. The hum grew louder as I took another hesitant step. Sparks of golden light snapped across the obsidian, bright enough to sting my eyes. "No," I whispered. "No, it's not reacting. It's malfunctioning. It's Lyra." Cale's voice was low, steady. "It is recognizing you." My heart jumped painfully. Recognizing me? I was an Omega, a healer, a girl who spent her life trying to disappear into corners so Rowan wouldn't shame me. A wolf no one believed existed until she tore through my skin like a sun being born. I was nothing. The throne, this ancient symbol of power, should ignore me completely. But instead, it hummed louder, pulsing gold, like a heartbeat awakening after centuries of sleep. Cale reached into a stone alcove near the throne and pulled out a weathered book. Its cover cracked, its pages yellowed. He flipped it open and handed it to me. My hands shook as I read the first line. "When the golden wolf awakens, a kingdom must choose its true ruler." My chest constricted. The words blurred. Choose its ruler? Choose me? No. No, that was wrong. I wasn't a ruler. I wasn't even wanted. My voice broke. This must be a mistake. Cale stepped closer, the shadows shifting around him. "It isn't. I'm not meant for this. I said, shaking my head. I'm not meant for anything. Rowan was right, Do not finish that sentence. His voice cracked across the room like thunder. I flinched. Kale exhaled slowly, his anger cooling into something gentler. You think Rowan's rejection defines you? He asked softly. You think the cruelty of a pack that feared your light speaks truth about who you are? I couldn't meet his eyes, because a part of me still believed it. A part of me always would. He stepped closer, lowering his voice to a whisper. This throne doesn't react to lies. He nodded toward the golden pulsing. It reacts to destiny. A tremor ran through me. Fear. Real fear. Because destiny was too big, too heavy, too impossible. My wolf isn't meant for this, I whispered. Kale's gaze softened. Your wolf is meant for everything. The golden light brightened again, so bright it illuminated my shaking hands, my trembling breath, the fracture running down my identity like a fault line splitting open. Destiny had chosen me, and I didn't know who I was anymore. A rejected Omega? A monster? A queen? I didn't know. All I knew was that the throne hummed louder, pulsing gold as if calling to me. And I was terrified to answer. By the time the sun dipped behind the Bloodfang Mountains, I had almost convinced myself I could get through the evening unnoticed. I was wrong. The royal dining hall was a cavern of dark stone pillars and flickering silver torches. Long tables stretched from wall to wall, filled with nobles dressed in fabrics so rich they looked stolen from gods. Their laughter echoed like blades scraping across shields, sharp, cold, dangerous. Kyle walked beside me, every step radiating quiet power, but it didn't matter. Every eye in that hall turned toward me, and every one of them glared, not with curiosity, not with confusion, with hatred. She's the Golden Wolf? Someone hissed. Impossible. Blasphemy. She must have deceived the king. The words hit like stones. My steps faltered. Kale noticed. Without a word, he placed a hand on my lower back, steady, grounding, guiding me toward the high table. The moment his hand touched me, the nobles stiffened. Whispers, shocked, vicious, rippled through the hall. He pulled out the chair beside his own. For me. As I sat, I felt the nobles' stares carving into my skin. My palms were cold, my heartbeat painfully loud. I didn't belong here. I shouldn't be here. And gods. They knew it. Across the table, a woman with jeweled braids leaned forward, eyes like burnished steel. She is a deceiver, she said loudly enough for half the hall to hear. Another noble sneered. She bewitched the king. There is no other explanation. A man at the far end nodded, lifting his goblet. What Omega gains power overnight? What Omega shifts into something ancient? Something extinct? His lip curled. No one, unless she tampered with forbidden rites. Gasps. Murmurs. Agreeing whispers. My stomach twisted. I kept my gaze fixed on the table, fingers clenching in Kale's cloak draped around my shoulders. I wanted to disappear, but Kale didn't flinch. He didn't glare back, didn't bare his teeth, didn't command silence. He simply watched them with a stillness that made my pulse stutter. The nobles took his silence as permission to go further. One man, Lord Veros, I'd heard the name before, stood up slowly. He was tall, elegant, dripping in gold chains, arrogance hanging on him like a second cloak. He raised his goblet, voice dripping with malicious delight. Shift again, Omega. My breath froze. Every instinct screamed to run. The room erupted into supportive murmurs. Yes. Shift. Prove yourself. Show us the truth. She cannot. She faked it. Do it, little Omega. The hall felt smaller, hotter. The walls seemed to close in, pressing against my lungs. I swallowed hard. I don't... Shift, Lord Veros said again, louder, cutting me off. He slammed his goblet down, hard. Wine splashed across the table like blood. A sharp, mocking smile spread across his face. Or admit your miracle was nothing but a trick of sick magic. My chest constricted. My wolf stirred uneasily inside me, uncertain, frightened by the hostility pressing in on us from every direction. The stares burned across my back, turning my skin to ice. I opened my mouth, but Kale moved first. His palm slammed onto the table. Not hard, not loud, but the sound cracked through the hall like thunder. Silence fell instantly. The torches flickered violently, shadows jerking back in fear. Kale rose slowly, too slowly. Each inch of his height revealed a storm barely contained beneath his skin. His voice dropped into a low growl that snaked through the room, freezing every breath. She, Kyle said, eyes burning with silver fire, is under my protection. Lord Veros went pale. Someone gulped audibly. Kale stepped around the table, placing himself between me and the nobles, like a shield carved from storm and steel. You will not command her, he said softly, which somehow made it worse. You will not test her. You will not touch her. You will not even think of threatening her. He turned his head slightly, just enough for the entire hall to feel the weight behind his words. Or you will answer to me. The room shook with the force of it. The nobles bowed, their heads terrified. Lord Veros stumbled backward, muttering apologies he did not mean. Shame burned hot in my cheeks, but for the first time it wasn't the kind that crushed me. It wasn't the kind that made me small. It was something else, something steadier. A spark of validation, soft, hesitant, terrifying. Because Kale hadn't just defended me, he'd chosen to. Not as a strategy, not as a duty, not because of my wolf, but because he meant it. And that terrified me more than their hatred, because belonging, real belonging, was more frightening than rejection. Kale returned to his seat, lowering himself beside me with lethal grace. He didn't touch me, didn't speak, didn't even look at me. But the air around us throbbed with something powerful, something unspoken, something unmistakable. Protection, recognition, connection. I exhaled shakily. The hall watched, and for the first time, I realized the danger wasn't just the nobles who wanted me dead. The danger was the part of me, trembling under Kale's protection, that wanted to belong here, with him. The dining hall's whispers clung to my skin long after Kale dismissed the nobles. Even as we walked through the stone corridors of Bloodfang Keep, the echo of Deceiver, Bewitched, Omega scraped against my ribs like claws. I kept my gaze on the floor, Kale's long strides ahead of me the only thing keeping me moving. He didn't speak. He didn't look back. He didn't slow down. But I felt him. Felt the storm boiling beneath his calm exterior. Felt the tension rippling through the air around him like lightning coiled, waiting. We walked until the torches thinned and the hall opened into a balcony bathed in moonlight. The Moon Terrace, a place reserved only for rulers. I hesitated at the threshold. Kale didn't turn, but his voice came low, certain. Come here. The night air was cool against my skin as I stepped out. Below, the land stretched in silver shadows, the forests, the rivers, the mountain range cutting the horizon. Wolves howled somewhere in the distance, long and mournful. Kyle rested his hands on the stone railing and finally looked at me. Not like the nobles did. Not with suspicion or hatred. Not with pity. With something sharper. Something quieter. Something that made my heart stutter painfully. Tell me, he said softly. Who broke you? The words hit harder than any blow I'd taken tonight. I stiffened. I wasn't... Lyra. My name in his voice felt different, heavy, important, like I couldn't hide behind silence anymore. He stepped closer, slowly, giving me space to pull away. I didn't. His gaze locked onto mine, unwavering. You weren't always this afraid. You weren't always this small. What happened to you? Small. The word hollowed me. A laugh, bitter, broken, slipped out of me before I could stop it. What didn't happen? I whispered. He waited. I swallowed hard. My hands trembled as I gripped the edge of his cloak, drawing it tighter around myself. It started when I was 14, I said, when my first shift was supposed to come. Cale's posture tensed, not from surprise, but from the certainty that he already suspected where this was going. I inhaled shakily. Rowan told me it was dangerous for Omegas to shift without guidance, said I was too fragile, said I could hurt myself. Cale's jaw ticked. I looked at the moon because staring at him was too much. I believed him. I trusted him. He brought me tea before every ritual practice. Said it would help me relax. Said it would make my wolf calm. Said it was for my own good. Kyle's silence wasn't empty. It was heavy with a fury brewing beneath the surface. I continued. The tea was laced, I whispered. Herbs that numb the wolf, that weaken her, that keep her from rising. Kyle inhaled sharply, silver eyes burning. My own voice shook. I thought I was broken. I thought my wolf hated me. I thought... My throat closed. I thought something was wrong with me. The wind swept across the terrace, cold and soft, brushing through my hair like a passing kindness. Cale closed his eyes for a single breath. When he opened them, they were darker, sharper, like moonlight hardened into steel. Rowan drugged you, he said quietly, to keep you from shifting. A tremor ran through me. He said shifting would hurt, I whispered. And it did. Because she was fighting through poison, through chains I didn't know were there. He told me it proved I wasn't meant to shift at all. Cale stepped closer, slow and controlled. And you believed him. The words weren't an accusation. They were an understanding. I nodded. Tears blurred my vision. He wanted a weak mate, I said, voice cracking. Someone who depended on him. Someone he could control. Someone who wouldn't ever overshadow him. My voice broke on that last word. Cale's breath left him in a slow, furious exhale. He took the final step toward me. His hand lifted, but he didn't touch me. He hovered an inch from my cheek, waiting. Always waiting for permission. I leaned into the warmth of his palm without thinking. His touch was gentle, reverent. Look at me, he whispered. I did. You weren't broken, Lyra. I shook my head, tears slipping down my cheeks. I felt broken. His thumb brushed a tear away. You were shackled. The words sank deep, past bone, past memory, past every scar Rowan had carved into me. Shackled. Not weak, not wolfless, not worthless. Shackled. A sob tore out of me, sharper than the others. My knees buckled, but Cale's hand moved instantly to my waist, steadying me. His touch wasn't possessive. It was protective. You endured, he murmured. You survived what would have destroyed others. And when your wolf rose, she rose with the fury of years stolen from her. I pressed my forehead against his chest, trembling. He didn't stiffen, didn't pull away. He wrapped an arm around me, slowly, carefully, as if he knew this was the first safe place I'd had in years. For a long moment we stood under the moon, his heart beating steady beneath my cheek, my wolves' grief finally spilling free, breaking, softening, healing, connection. When I finally lifted my head, Kyle's eyes were molten silver. Lyra, he whispered, I swear on my crown, no one will ever chain you again. And for the first time in my life, I believed someone. The next morning, Bloodfang woke me with dread. Not from nightmares, not from Rowan's memory, not even from the gnawing ache of everything I had confessed the night before. This dread came from the sharp gong that rang across the keep, deep, metallic, carrying a weight that curled my stomach into knots. Cale was waiting outside my chamber door. His expression told me everything before he even spoke. The High Council has summoned us, he said. Summoned us, not him. Because this wasn't about the kingdom, it was about me. I forced my legs to move, though every step felt like walking toward a blade. Kale matched my pace, slow and controlled, radiating a quiet fury beneath the surface. "They intend to put you through the formal trial," he said without looking at me. My throat tightened. "If I fail?" He stopped walking, slowly, deliberately. Then he turned to me, silver eyes burning with a promise. "You will not fail." It should have comforted me. It didn't. Because I still remembered the purity circle, my bones twisting, my wolf choking under layers of poison Rowan fed her for years. One wrong breath, one wrong surge of fear, and I could lose control. I could lose everything. But Kale didn't wait for my answer. He simply offered his hand, not touching, but close enough for me to take if I needed to. I did. The moment my fingers brushed his, some of the dread eased, not gone, but quieted. The High Council chamber was nothing like the Hall of Kings. It wasn't grand. It wasn't beautiful. It was ancient, circular, cold stone, tall ritual pillars etched with sigils that glowed faint blue, a carved sun symbol at the center where I was meant to stand. Counselors lined the chamber, old, powerful wolves with eyes that had seen too much and minds sharpened by centuries of political maneuvering. Every gaze snapped to me when I entered. "Blasphemy," whispered one. "An anomaly," muttered another. "A threat," growled the third. Kale stepped behind me, close enough that I felt his warmth, his certainty, his storm-wrapped presence. The eldest counselor rose, long white hair pulled back in a severe braid. "Lyra of Moonridge," he intoned, "you are summoned for the Goldfire trial. Shift, as the law requires of any wolf claiming legitimacy." My breath caught. If I failed, I would be exiled. If I succeeded, I would terrify them. There was no winning. I stepped to the center of the sun symbol. The stone was cold beneath my bare feet. The sigils on the ritual pillars flickered, hungry, anticipating, ready to judge. Kyle's voice came from behind me, low and steady. "I am here." Those 3 words settled into my spine like armor. I inhaled deeply. Then I reached inward. Not with fear, not with desperation, but with trust. My wolf responded instantly. She didn't whimper this time, didn't scratch weakly, didn't drown beneath herbs and poison. She rose, gracefully, powerfully, like she had been waiting her entire life for a moment she finally recognized belonged to her. My bones shifted, not with pain, but with warmth. My hands softened into paws. My breath deepened. My body glowed as golden light rolled across my skin like sunlight through water. Gasps erupted around the chamber. "Impossible! She's shifting without strain. No wolf shifts like this." I didn't hear the rest. I only heard the steady pulse of my wolf, alive and endless inside me. When the golden fur settled across my body, the chamber fell into a stunned silence. Then, I howled. Not in fear, not in agony, not in humiliation, but in power. A howl that wasn't just sound, it was force. It slammed into the pillars, the sigils, blue moments ago, ignited gold. Flames erupted at their bases, racing upward in spirals that crackled and snapped like they recognized me, consumed by something older than ritual, older than law, older than the wolves who corrupted both. The fire reached the ceiling, turning the chamber into a swirling dome of shimmering gold. Counselors staggered backward, covering their faces. One dropped to their knees. Another whispered, terrified, "Golden fire, divine fire." Kale didn't move. He stood behind me like a shadow forged of iron, letting the flames dance around him. His eyes, sharp, fierce, unshakable, held pride so intense it stole my breath. My howl faded. The fire dimmed. The pillars cooled. I shifted back with the same effortless grace, kneeling on the stone, chest rising and falling, skin tingling with power. The room stared. In silence. In disbelief, in reluctant awe, the eldest counselor finally found his voice. She passed. But Kale didn't wait for their approval. He stepped forward, placing his cloak around my shoulders once more. Then he looked at the council, at all of them, and with a voice that shook the chamber more than my howl had, he said, "She is the Golden Wolf. She is legitimate, and she is recognized." No one dared argue. No one dared breathe. Because the trial hadn't just proven my wolf existed, it had awakened something they could never hope to control. Power, fear, recognition. And as Kale helped me rise, the truth settled into my bones like gold fire. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was becoming. The Goldfire trial was over, but its echoes clung to my skin long after the council dismissed us. Even as Somerset, Kale walked me through the dim torchlit corridors of Bloodfang Keep. I could still feel the burn of gold in my veins, the echo of my own howl reverberating through my bones. I should have been terrified. I should have been overwhelmed. I should have been collapsing from the enormity of what I had just done. Instead, all I could think about was him, King Kale, the man who stood behind me while the world watched for me to fall, the man whose presence steadied my knees more than the floor beneath my feet. The man who now walked so close to me that his warmth brushed my arm with every step. He wasn't speaking, but he didn't have to. His silence was a pulse of its own, measured, controlled, threaded with the same impossible restraint I felt trembling through my own body. When he opened the door to the moon terrace, I followed without question. Moonlight spilled over the balcony, painting everything in silver and shadow. But Kale looked carved from the night itself. Broad shoulders, tense jaw, silver eyes glowing like a storm waiting to break. He didn't look at me at first. He looked at my hands. "You shifted perfectly," he said quietly. His voice was so low it might have been a growl. No pain, no hesitation, no fear. My breath caught. "Because you were behind me." His head lifted slightly. Now he looked at me. Really looked. Like I was something he couldn't decide whether to revere or devour. The gold in my veins surged. My wolf stirred. Gentle at first, then fiercely, pushing against the edges of my chest as if trying to rise and press herself against him. I pressed a hand to my heart. "She's responding to you." Kyle stepped closer. One slow, devastating step. "And how do you respond to me, Lyra?" My mouth went dry. The wind shifted, sending a strand of hair across my cheek. I reached up instinctively, but Kale's hand moved faster. His knuckles brushed my cheekbone. Barely a touch. Featherlight. But my breath fractured on impact. Heat shot through me. Not the chaotic burn of shifting. Not the dizzy ache of fear. Something deeper. Something older. Something my wolf recognized instantly. I inhaled sharply. "Kyle?" He froze, but he didn't pull his hand away. His thumb ghosted over my jaw as if memorizing the shape of me. "Your wolf is calling to mine," he murmured. "She has been since the moment she first rose." A tremor ran through me. "That's not normal." "No." His lips twitched. Not a smile. Something more primal. Not normal at all. He lifted his other hand, cupping the side of my neck with a reverence that made my knees weaken. "Lyra," he breathed, "look at me." I did. God's help me, I did. And his control shattered. Not with violence, not with dominance, but with hunger. Raw, aching hunger he'd been holding back for far too long. He leaned down slowly, giving me every chance to pull away. I didn't. When his mouth touched mine, the world broke open. The kiss wasn't desperate. It wasn't rushed. It was slow, agonizingly slow, like he was learning me, like he was savoring every breath I took. Like the act itself was something sacred. Gold light shimmered across my skin, rippling in waves like glowing ink. His fingers tightened gently at my nape, his lips deepening the kiss until the gold fire fluttering beneath my flesh became a storm. My wolf howled inside me, silent but deafening, pushing me closer, demanding, claiming. I parted my lips in a soft, helpless sound. Kale groaned. It was the kind of sound that made heat spiral through me, low and dangerous. The kind of sound that made every part of me ache to press closer. He kissed me harder. Once. Twice. Then tore himself away like the effort cost him. His breath hitched. Lyra. He rasped, forehead pressed to mine. If I go further, I will claim you. The word sent a shock through me. Not fear. Not confusion. Awakening. Claiming wasn't a threat. It was a promise. A vow from a king whose wolf had already chosen mine. My heartbeat hammered against his chest. His hands shook against my skin. But he stayed where he was, breathing hard, pulling restraint over himself in jagged pieces. Not because he didn't want me, because he wanted me too much. I closed my eyes, my voice barely a whisper. You stopped. He let out a broken laugh. Because if I taste you again, I won't. And something fierce and golden inside me whispered, maybe I don't want you to stop. But I kept that to myself. For now. Kale pulled back only enough to look at me, gold light reflecting in his silver eyes. The bond had begun, and neither of us could pretend otherwise. Night in Bloodfang Keep was never silent. Wolves patrolled the outer walls, torches crackled against stone. Guards murmured softly as their shifts rotated. Yet somehow, despite all that movement, all that sound, the night felt wrong. Too still, too cold, too heavy with a kind of weighting that pressed against my ribs. My wolf felt it first. A low, uneasy growl vibrated in my chest as I tried to sleep. I shifted under the furs, pulling Kale's cloak tighter around myself, but the sense of danger only sharpened. Something is here. Something is watching. Something wants blood. I sat up, breath quickening. Before I could move, before I could even call out, I smelled him. Not Kale. Not a Bloodfang guard. Rowan. The scent of pine rot and dominance poisoning the air. The man who broke me. The man who chained my wolf. The man who rejected me before the entire pack. The man who looked at me like I was filth beneath his boots. He was here. In the king's fortress. I barely had time to stand before a shadow lunged at me from the darkness. A rogue wolf, massive and snarling, tackled me to the ground. His claws raked across my shoulder, hot pain flaring. I screamed, but my wolf screamed louder. Then came Rowan's voice, hated, familiar, dripping with rage. Hold her down! She dies tonight before she embarrasses another throne. A second wolf crashed into the room, snapping his jaws inches from my face. Another rogue barreled in behind him. 3 wolves. And Rowan. They came to end me. For one heartbeat, I froze. Fear. Cold, choking, paralyzing fear. Then, my wolf rose. Not timid, not poisoned, not silenced by lies. She rose like wildfire. Shift, she demanded. And I did. My bones broke and rebuilt in a heartbeat, faster and harder than ever before. Golden fur erupted across my skin, my muscles expanding with violent force. Pain vanished beneath the holy burn of power. I hit the ground as a wolf, not Rowan's wolf, not some trembling Omega's wolf, but the golden wolf. My roar cracked the window. The rogues stumbled back, ears flattening, whimpers choking in their throats. I leapt. My jaws clamped onto the shoulder of the first wolf, golden fire scorching through my teeth. He yelped, too slow, too weak, and I flung him across the room like a broken toy. Another pounced at my flank. I spun, slamming him into the wall, claws tearing through fur and bone. Blood splattered across the stone. Rowan shouted, "Stop her! Kill her! Now!" His voice triggered the deepest fury I'd ever felt. He did this. He drugged my wolf. He humiliated me. He enslaved me. He planned to kill me even now. My vision tunneled in molten gold. I turned toward him. He backed up a step. Just one. Cowardly. panicked. "Lyra, listen." He stammered, hands shaking. I didn't. I lunged. My claws slashed across his chest, ripping through his leather armor like cloth. He cried out, stumbling into the corridor. He was bleeding from me, and yet he still snarled. "You think that king will keep you? You think he wants you? You were mine to control, mine to discard." I roared so loudly the torches guttered. He flinched, true terror flashing across his eyes. Good. Let him feel what he made me feel. Another rogue wolf slammed into my side before I reached him. We tumbled across the floor, snarling and snapping. His teeth tore into my fur, but pain drowned in the storm of rage blazing through me. I sank my fangs into his throat. One bite, one jerk. Silence. I raised my head, blood dripping from my jaws, and froze. Not from fear, from recognition. Kale stood in the doorway. His chest heaved. His eyes glowed silver bright. His wolf pulsed just beneath his skin, one breath away from tearing through. He took in everything in a heartbeat. The three fallen rogues, the blood staining the stone, Rowan trembling against the far wall, and me, golden, blazing, alive with fury. He didn't roar. He didn't command. He didn't flinch. He simply said, voice low with lethal calm, "Move aside, Lyra." I did. Kale stepped past me like winter incarnate. Rowan raised a shaking hand. King Kale, I didn't. This is a misunderstanding. Kale grabbed him by the throat, lifted him, clean off the ground. "You touched what is mine," he growled. "Your last mistake." His fingers tightened. Rowan choked. Kale threw him across the hall with bone-shattering force. I should have felt fear. I didn't. I felt protected, claimed without being caged, safe in a way I'd never known before. Kale turned back to me. His eyes softened. Not the king now, but the man. He stepped close, pressing his forehead lightly to mine, uncaring that I was still in wolf form, still shaking with bloodlust. "I came the moment I felt your fear," he murmured. My wolf leaned into him, trembling. His hand, steady, warm, settled against my fur. "Lyra," he whispered, voice breaking with something raw and unguarded. "No one will touch you again. Not while I draw breath." Fear faded. Fury quieted. Loyalty deepened. Sharper. Fiercer. Undeniable. My wolf curled against him, and I knew. This battle wasn't just survival. It was the moment the bond forged itself in flame. The next morning, the entire keep felt tense. Not from Rowan's attack. Not from the bodies the guards dragged from my chamber. Not even from the fact that I had shifted without losing control. Golden fire still humming under my skin. No. This tension was quieter. Older. Like the air itself was waiting for something to unfold. Kale stayed at my side as we walked through the halls, his hand occasionally brushing mine. Not enough to be a claim, not enough to start something he wasn't ready to finish, but enough to make my chest tighten each time. I should have been shaken. I should have been exhausted. But my wolf prowled beneath my skin, wide awake, restless, sensing something approaching. We reached the Hall of Records, massive stone doors carved with ancient wolves. Kale pushed them open with ease. Inside stood Elder Malus. Her robes shimmered like dusk. Her hair was silver white, braided with moon beads. Her eyes, sharp, knowing, fixed on me the moment I entered. She lowered her head slightly. Not to Kale. To me. It sent a shock through my spine. Kale noticed. "Elder, you requested an audience?" She nodded, then lifted a scroll, thick, old, sealed with the symbol of the first wolves. "This was found last night," she said, "hidden in the lower vaults. Someone tried to bury it centuries ago." Kale frowned. "What does it concern?" Milas looked at me. "It concerns her." My heart stuttered, breath catching in my throat. Kale stepped closer, his voice dropping into a warning rumble. "Explain." Elder Malus broke the seal and slowly unrolled the parchment. The ink shimmered gold. Kale's eyes narrowed. This script belongs to the Auric line, Malus finished. Only they could write with gold. My wolf pressed against my ribs, tail raised, alert. Malus read aloud. When the golden wolf rises, she will tremble no throne. For she is the one the throne waits for. The air thickened. She continued. She does not follow kings. She chooses one. Silence. Cold. Absolute. My chest tightened so sharply I grabbed the table for support. Kale went still, utterly still, the way he did right before shifting, before unleashing something dangerous. His silver eyes scanned the words again, jaw clenching. Malus lifted her gaze to me. You wondered why the throne stirred when you approached it. I swallowed hard. Because I'm powerful? No. Malus shook her head. The golden wolf is not heir to power. She is the measure of it. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. The throne did not tremble because of the king, she said softly. It trembled because it recognized the presence of the one destined to decide who may rule. Destined to decide. Not Kale's power, not Kale's legitimacy. Mine. A soft sound escaped me, half gasp, half protest. That's impossible. I was unwanted? Malus stepped closer. Rejected? Sabotaged? Shackled? Her voice gentled. You were never weak, Lyra. You were suppressed. Because those who knew the old prophecy feared someone like you. Kale's hand curled into a fist at his side. Malus wasn't done. The throne responded to your wolf, she said quietly. Not to Kale's. Not to any king before him. My pulse raced. Kale's gaze flicked to me. Intense, searching, shaken despite the iron control he usually carried like armor. Lyra, he murmured, when you touched the throne, it awakened. Awakened. Because of me. Not because of him. Not because of lineage or law. But because the throne recognized a right I had never imagined belonged to me. My breath trembled. You're saying, I choose the king? No, Malus corrected gently. You are the one the throne chooses. It hit like a blow. My knees weakened. My wolf surged. Not in fear, but in fierce recognition, a truth she had known long before I did. I looked at Kale. Really looked. At the king who stood behind me in the council chamber. At the man who knelt beside my wolf when no one else dared. At the protector who found me in the dark before I even screamed. At the leader whose power didn't threaten mine, only complemented it. Kale held my gaze, his expression rawer than I had ever seen it. Not fear, not entitlement, not expectation, just truth. Lyra, he said softly, I never asked for your allegiance. I only swore to protect you. Whatever this prophecy means, the choice is yours. My throat tightened painfully. For the first time in my life, the weight pressing against my chest wasn't shame or fear or rejection. It was power. Power that belonged to me alone. Revelation, acceptance, alignment. My wolf rose inside me, steady, resolute, and whispered a single word. Choose. I lifted my chin, eyes locked with Kale's, and silently, I did. The night of the moonmark came faster than I was ready for. Yet when I stepped into the courtyard, bare feet brushing the cold marble, the air buzzing with electricity, I felt something inside me shift, settle, align. The moon was full above us, enormous and gold-tinged, as though the sky itself knew what was coming. Wolves filled the perimeter, guards, nobles, elders, warriors, all watching, all waiting. But I only saw one person. Kale stood at the center of the courtyard, facing the obsidian throne that had cracked when my wolf first rose. The moonlight poured over him, broad shoulders rigid, silver eyes burning with quiet purpose, a king carved from storm and steel. When he looked at me, the world narrowed. He extended his hand. Lyra, he said, voice low, steady, echoing through the courtyard. Come. I walked toward him, each step steadier than the last. My wolf paced under my skin, tail high, pride rising like fire through my veins. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't hesitant. She knew this moment in a way deeper than memory. Kale met me in the center. For a breath, for a heartbeat, we simply looked at each other, his storm meeting my gold. Then we knelt, side by side, equal, aligned. The courtyard fell silent. Elder Malus stepped forward, her staff glowing with a soft lunar shimmer. Tonight, she called, the moonmark of Auric bond will be completed. Two wolves, whose fates have collided, will bind their destinies beneath the moon's judgment. Her gaze drifted to me. Lyra of the Auric line, she said. Are you ready to claim what was written for you? Yes. The answer pulsed through me, through bone, blood, wolf. I nodded. Kale's hand brushed mine, lightly, reverently. Shift, Malus commanded. The air rippled. My wolf surged up, golden fire rolling through my body like a tidal wave of light. Bones reshaped, fur ignited with molten gold, my vision sharpened into perfect clarity. Across from me, Kale shifted too, an obsidian wolf emerging, massive and perfectly still, moonlight tracing the sharp angles of his powerful form. Obsidian and gold, night and sun, storm and fire. We circled each other instinctively, wolves moving with the kind of synchronicity that belonged only to fated pairs. Except this bond was older, deeper, carved by prophecy rather than destiny. Kale's wolf lowered his head in acknowledgement. Mine pressed her nose against his cheek in answer. Gasps swept through the courtyard. I shifted back first, breath spilling out in a plume of mist. Kale followed, rising beside me in human form, chest bare, eyes glowing silver blue. Malus lifted the ancient Auric staff. Place your palm on the throne, Lyra. I turned. The obsidian throne loomed before me, cracked, dark, a relic of power struggling to endure. The fracture running down its center looked deeper than before, like it had been waiting for the one wolf who could decide its future. Kale stepped behind me, not touching, but close enough that his warmth steadied every trembling part of me. Go, on, he murmured. It will not break you. I breathed in once, twice. Then I pressed my palm to the cold stone. Golden fire erupted from my skin. It wasn't violent this time. It wasn't a blast or an explosion. It was a bloom, soft and controlled, spreading across the throne in swirling patterns. The cracks glowed, fused, healed. The stone hummed beneath my hand, recognizing, not my strength, not my wolf, me, the one it had been waiting for. A hush fell so complete it felt like the moon itself held its breath. Then Kale leaned in, voice barely audible, yet echoing through me like thunder. You weren't born to kneel, Lyra. His fingers brushed the back of my hand. You were born to reign. The power in me rose, not like a tide, but like a dawn, steady, warm, claiming everything it touched. I lifted my chin and stepped back beside him, golden light still dripping from my fingers like liquid sunlight. Kyle lowered himself to one knee, not in servitude, not in surrender, in acknowledgement, in respect, in recognition of the wolf who could choose the king. For a heartbeat, for a breath, the entire kingdom saw me, fully, clearly. Not a rejected Omega, not a broken girl, not a trembling healer, the golden wolf, the throne's chosen. Power didn't scare me anymore, because it wasn't a burden. It was a birthright. The moonlight bathed us both as the auric bond sealed around us like a blessing. Transformation, empowerment, becoming. Tonight, I didn't rise alone. Tonight, I rose with a king. The great hall of Bloodfang was filled long before the ceremony began. Wolves lined the marble steps, nobles crowded the balconies, warriors stood shoulder to shoulder in the aisles. The air buzzed with tension and something sharper. Anticipation, disbelief, a hint of fear. They had gathered to witness a spectacle no kingdom had seen in centuries. Not a coronation, not a trial, not a victory. A choosing. My choosing. I stood at the foot of the dais, the obsidian throne, now streaked with healed gold, towering behind me. The golden light embedded in its veins pulsed softly, like a heartbeat syncing with mine, as though it recognized me. I still felt the echo of the moonmark ritual in my skin, warmth humming at my fingertips, a subtle rhythm under my ribs, as if my wolf and the throne itself breathed in the same cadence. But the thing that steadied me most was the man standing a few steps away. Kale. He was dressed in ceremonial armor, obsidian plates etched with silver storms, a crimson cloak flowing behind him. His crown sat heavy on his black hair, yet he wore it like a second skin. His eyes, however, weren't on the crowd. They were on me. And for the first time since I'd met him, I didn't shy away. I lifted my chin. I stood tall, because I knew who I was now. Elder Malis struck her staff against the floor. The hall fell silent. Bloodfang, she called, her voice ringing through the chamber. The Alpha King brings forth a declaration that will reshape our kingdom. She stepped aside. Kale moved toward me with slow, deliberate steps, each one echoing across stone and bone and breath. Every gaze followed him. Every heart stilled. When he reached me, he paused. Not for effect, but for breath. Like he needed to steady himself before touching what he valued too much. His hand lifted, brushing a single strand of hair from my face. My pulse stuttered. Then he turned to the court. Before you stands Lyra of the Auric line, he said. His voice was deep, sharp, commanding, the kind that made the air vibrate. A wolf born under prophecy, a wolf the throne itself recognized before any king. A ripple of shock swept through the hall. Kale wasn't finished. She was mocked, he continued, sabotaged, rejected, broken by a man who saw only his own insecurity staring back at him. My breath hitched. His gaze flicked across the crowd, sharp, lethal, until it landed on one trembling figure at the edge of the hall. Rowan. He stood bound and gagged, wrists shackled, eyes wide with the dread of a man who finally understood what he had lost. Kale's voice hardened. The beta who rejected her called her unworthy. He stepped closer to me, so close I could feel the warmth rolling off his body. And he was right. My stomach dropped. But Kale wasn't finished. She is not worthy of him. He turned fully toward me, voice rising with a force that cracked through the hall like thunder. She is worthy of a crown. Gasps exploded. Wolves stumbled back. Some dropped to their knees instinctively. Kale reached into the folds of his cloak and drew out a small golden sigil, a crest shaped like a rising sun with a wolf's head at its center. The Auric crest. The mark of a queen. My breath trembled, but I didn't step back. My wolf leaned forward, pressing against my skin in approval. No fear, no hesitation. Kale lifted the crest. Lyra, he said, voice soft but carrying through the hall. By right of prophecy, by right of power, by right of what the moon itself revealed. He brushed the crest over the side of my neck. Heat bloomed. Gold light flared under my skin. My wolf rose, proud, radiant, triumphant. Kale's hand lingered for a moment, thumb grazing the newly formed mark. Then he turned to the court and declared, "The Omega he rejected is the queen chosen by fate." Silence. And then, howls erupted, echoing through the hall, through the mountains, through my bones. Warriors dropped to their knees. Nobles bowed. Even the elders lowered their heads in reverence. For me, not as victim, not as rejected, not as a trembling Omega who could barely shift. For me, the golden wolf. My throat tightened. My eyes stung, but I did not cry. I lifted my chin. I stood straighter. For the first time, I truly felt it. Not fear, not uncertainty, not the weight of past wounds. Belonging. Kale turned back to me, eyes molten silver. You ascend today, he murmured, not because I chose you. He brushed a knuckle along my jaw, but because fate already did. I drew a steady breath, gold burning warm beneath my skin. Ascension didn't feel overwhelming, it felt inevitable. I reached for Kale's hand, not as a trembling girl, not as a broken wolf, but as a queen. And when our fingers intertwined, the hall roared again, because everyone could see it now. The bond, the power, the future. I wasn't standing in Kale's shadow anymore. I stood beside him, as his equal, as his queen. 3 weeks. 3 weeks since the Goldfire trial. 3 weeks since the Moonmark ritual. 3 weeks since my wolf rose in front of the kingdom and rewrote what every law, every elder, every tradition claimed was possible. 3 weeks since Kale placed the auric crest on my skin and said I was born to reign. And still, every morning I woke wondering if the world had imagined me, or if I had imagined it. But today, walking through the royal procession, gold shimmering beneath my skin, 1,000 wolves bowing as Kale and I passed, there was no denying it. I was no longer the Omega who'd been mocked, no longer the girl who'd shaken under Rowan's rejection, no longer the healer who hid behind silence and fear and hope that others would see her. I was Lyra, the Golden Queen. The air was thick with incense and night-blooming flowers as we moved down the marble road toward the festival square. Wolves lined both sides of the path, warriors in gleaming armor, children perched on their parents' shoulders, elders with hands over their hearts. Music floated on the wind, deep drums mixed with the soft chime of moonbells. Lanterns swung above us, scattering warm light across stone and fur and faces overflowing with awe. But beneath the beauty, I heard the whispers. The girl the beta mocked. Is that really her? A golden wolf, a true auric queen. Destiny crowned her. She restored the throne. She changed everything. The words didn't sting. Not anymore. Now they settled around me like confirmation of something I'd known deep inside my wolf long before the world ever saw it. Kale walked beside me, tall and steady, dressed in ceremonial black and silver. He looked like a storm made flesh, powerful, composed, and yet softer around the edges when his gaze drifted toward me. I felt him watching. Not the queen, not the symbol. Me. I turned my head slightly and Kyle leaned in without hesitation, pressing a kiss to my temple. A soft, warm gesture, one no one dared question. The crowd inhaled in one sweeping breath. Kale murmured against my skin. You didn't just survive rejection, Lyra. His voice was low, intimate, meant for me alone despite the thousands watching. You reshaped kingdoms. A flush rose across my cheeks, not from embarrassment, but from a fierce, blooming pride. I had, not out of ambition, not out of vengeance, but because my wolf had fought to exist. Because power had been my birthright long before anyone believed it. Because truth has a way of breaking chains even when you don't know you're wearing them. We continued toward the center of the festival grounds, where a massive platform of white stone had been built. The moon throne and the gold throne sat side by side, equal in height, equal in weight, equal in power, a symbol of our rule, our bond, our choosing. Kale offered his hand as I stepped up to the platform. When my fingers touched his, a ripple of gold shimmered down my arm, light dancing beneath my skin like sunfire. Gasps erupted from the crowd. She glows. The golden wolf, blessed by the moon, chosen by prophecy. Their awe didn't overwhelm me anymore. It steadied me. I stood tall on the platform, letting the moonlight pour over me as if the sky itself recognized the shift inside my bones. Kale took his seat first, resting one hand on the carved armrest shaped like a wolf's head. I sat beside him on the gold throne, its surface warm beneath me, alive, awakened by the same fire that lived inside me. His hand found mine again, not as a claim, not as a demand, as a partnership, as belonging, as home. The crowd erupted into cheers, howls rising into the night sky in waves, thousands of voices calling in unity, honoring the bond sealed under the moon. Wolves shifted in celebration, racing through the square in streaks of silver, black, and russet. And my wolf rose inside me, stretching, basking, proud. This time, not in fear, not in fury, not in desperation to prove she existed, but in joy. Kale leaned closer, voice brushing my ear, warm and sure. Do you hear them? Yes, I whispered. They're celebrating. No, Lyra, he murmured. They're welcoming their queen. My breath caught, because it felt true. Not just politically, not just ritually, not just because a broken throne healed under my touch, but because for the first time in my life, I wasn't pretending to be small. I wasn't waiting for permission. I wasn't hiding my wolf. I wasn't hoping someone might choose me. I had chosen myself. And a kingdom had followed. I looked out over the sea of faces, the glow of lanterns, the moonlit sky stretching endlessly above us. Then I smiled, slow, deep, real, finally powerful, finally seen, finally home, the Golden Queen.